Well, this section 7, the forms of experience of death, is very rich. And one of the things I definitely want to get to is his brief but very interesting treatment of Epicurus. Because not only does Landsberg discuss and critically evaluate Plato's view of death, but he also looks at other philosophies and other philosophers. And again, this is very valuable, I think, because it helps us to understand him better, because he's distinguishing himself from other well-known positions on death. However, I felt that I had to go back to the beginning of section 7 because it is so rich, and another really valuable aspect of section 7 is how he extrapolates on his opening idea, which I mentioned in the last video on section 7. The importance of how we formulate the dependence or independence of personal life on bodily life. He explains that, or he again extrapolates on that. He goes further on that theme, describing how we do sort of conceive of the relation between spirit and body, or that crucial question of the dependence or independence of the person or self on or from the living body. He says, we anticipate something of the specific character of our own death in each experience, which speaks to us of this fundamental relationship, between body and self, or body and soul. Just the kind of thing that Plato was concerned with, right? In some forms of experience, we feel our personality trammeled, shattered, or stifled by our corporeality. Our corporeality is our bodiliness, the fact that we are body, but that our personality is something distinct from body. And this is the kind of thinking that I think informs Simmias's notion of the soul as harmony, trying to conceive of what the relationship is between something that Simmias sees as distinct from body, but perhaps so wrapped up in body that it cannot be separated from it. Right? That would be the anguish from the Christian point of view that Landsberg suggests. That is, that the anguish of the Christian would be the idea that the soul or the self or the person cannot be separated from body, is totally dependent upon body, and so dies with body. Here, death appears to us as the destruction of the person itself. So a thesis that said that the human being, which is both self or spirit or soul and body, that the former is dependent upon the latter, the soul is utterly dependent upon the body, is to be committed to that thesis, is to be committed to a kind of an annihilation theory of death, that death is the destruction of the person itself. The person seems to be only the smoke of the vital fires fed by the hard and solid reality of the living body. If at such a moment we visualize the corporeal reality of our life as destroyed, the person must also appear annihilated and dissolved, since now it will apparently lack its own central force. Man in such a state is a prey to an unlimited anguish of death. So let you know I'm right here. Which is quite different from a vital fear, and the whole spirit of the person is concentrated in this anguish. It is the horror of the person at the prospect of metaphysical abandonment, an abandonment which is already present in an anticipation of the end of corporeal existence. The prison house, and this is a reference to the characterization of the body in Plato's Phaedo as the prison house of the soul. The prison house was also a shelter. This is the great ambiguity in that. Man has no confidence in his powers of resistance to isolation, and thus he is, as it were, annihilated in anticipation. That is, to think of our own deaths in that way is to, in some way, annihilate ourselves while we're still alive. However, even here, this anticipatory anguish is never entirely without hope. Well, it's very dramatic characterization of the very ambivalent feelings and thoughts we have about the relation between mind, soul, spirit, person, self on the one hand, and body and the material organism on the other. On the one hand, we may, as Socrates in his heroic characterization of the philosopher in the first sections of the Phaedo, we may characterize the body as the prison house of the soul that the philosopher seeks to liberate themselves from. On the other hand, we have a sneaking suspicion, as Simmias does in his soulless harmony thesis, that the what does he say? The prison house is also a shelter. It may be that our personalities, our individuality, or how we know ourselves as individuals is totally dependent upon this body. So it's very dramatic and unresolved tension between two views of death that are determined by two views of the relationship between spirit and body. And I think that if that was all that we got out of Landsberg, it would be enough. It would justify reading it, because I think that he, in a particularly brilliant way, characterizes this fundamental question and the relationship between these two, the way we answer these two questions. I think he does it better than anybody I've ever read. And by that I mean the connection between the philosophical position on relationship of soul and body and the philosophical conception of death, that those two things, the way that we answer each of those questions is going to determine how we answer the other question, which is quite a good thing in terms of clarifying